Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Camille Ferguson, and this is Thriving Thursdays. And this has been an inception in a long time, and I'm just really excited for the birth of it happening today on April 17th, 2025. So I wanted to just do a brief introduction of who I am and why I'm here and the inspiration behind sharing this information today. So my name is Camille Ferguson. I have been in the health space for over 25 years. I started out just as a mom, trying to help my children. I have one child that was injured from her infant interventions, we'll say. And that really put me on a trajectory of finding answers and solutions for her. And I just wasn't getting the information that I wanted or felt comfortable with from my doctor. They would always say, "Oh, she's fine." And it was when she was about 16 that she was given a diagnosis of ADD, ADHD, and ODD, oppositional defiance disorder. And this was a really stressful time for us in our family, but I just kept persevering and pursuing this path of wellness. And in my late 30s, I actually attended uh, nursing school. I wanted to be a nurse midwife because it was always my dream to be a wellness professional and really empower women specifically to understand their bodies and the capability that their body was inherently designed to do. But now that I've learned more about this practice of regenerative health, I've understood that our bodies are designed to heal given the proper environment. And I found myself in a health crisis when I was in my mid 40s. I was pregnant with my fourth child, and we found out mis some misfortunate news about his health while I was pregnant. And that information really was devastating. The doctors told me that he had a lot of genetic abnormalities, and that information took host as trauma in my body. And I went down a downward spiral of chronic pain for over 4 years after he was born, which unfortunately he didn't make it, but thankfully he was in peace. There was no problems, and he just passed on. So that was really a challenging time for me, I'm sure, as you could imagine. And I was honestly praying for a solution. I didn't know how to get out of pain. The pain just continued on. And the doctor assured me that after I delivered the baby, the pain would go away. He thought it was sciatica, but it honestly never did. And I found myself self medicating with ibuprofen. I was taking about 2,000 milligrams of ibuprofen every day just to get through the day. And with my background and, visiting doctors for acute situations, it wasn't uh, my first inkling to really go to the doctor to get medication or anything like that. And so I tried all the other things. I tried acupuncture, I tried massage, and massage was pretty beneficial, but I found that it wasn't sustainable. It was very expensive. I was spending over $125 a week to get therapeutic massage. It did take me out of pain for the time being, but again, it was just not something that was in my budget. And when I found out what was going on with my body, I was given a diagnosis by the doctors. It's called spondylolisthesis, and this is essentially degeneration of the discs surrounding the vertebrae that cause the vertebrae to pull away. And this could have happened from an injury. It's not uncommon, especially in the sports field where athletes are enduring high impact. So it could have been a fall, earlier in my life, and then lifestyle and trauma caused this predisposition to reflect in the natural. So it was a manifestation happened in my body, and the doctor said that you should just get surgery. And I knew that wasn't a solution for me. And so I was really praying for a solution. And it was when I found really high caliber organic superfood nutrition that took pain out of my body in just a couple of days. I was very inflamed. And by this point, I had had another baby. He's now 6, almost 7. And I really started to pay attention to why food matters. And we'll get into that into further series, but that's really what brought me to this place. And simultaneously, I decided to align with that company that makes the superfoods. And I came across a really amazing woman. Her name is Carrie Drinkwine, and she's one of my colleagues, and she's actually the founder of the Institute of Regenerative Health. And it was in her own health crisis that she found this work as well. And so I want to talk about why I'm so passionate about this field is because it is a pioneering field. And when people find regenerative health, it's the last stop. And I want to just talk a little bit about what's different about regenerative health between the other modalities of healthcare that are popular and have been, widely used. So first of all, in regenerative health, we're really looking at the root cause. And I think that this is kind of a buzzword, but through the education and through the information that I've received, the root cause is so important to look at. And so in regenerative health, we are looking at the internal terrain of the body because the cells respond to their surrounding. So regenerative health, we look at the lymphatic system. We look at every single tissue, gland, and organ in the body and understand how they are interconnected. So in regenerative health, we also use modalities like iridology. Iridology is more of a pseudoscience, and I say that because everybody's eye is different, although it has a map to the body, and that doesn't differentiate. So for example, somebody may have liver weakness that shows up in their eye, but the person next to them doesn't have that going on in their health. But this is reflected through the eye, so you can see in real time what's going on internally through the optic nerve. The optic nerve is connected to 28,000 nerve endings in the body, and then that's reflected in this so-called map of the iris. So you can see in real time the condition of the tissues, glands, and organs. You can see the stage of the gut, the nervous system, the lymphatic system, and you can also see genetic inheritances, strengths, and weaknesses. So this is one tool that we use in regenerative health. We also use a very extensive health questionnaire that's broken down by each organ and gland in the body based on the symptomology. And in Western medicine, for example, you've got it's a treatment-based model. So when you go to your doctor, you can expect either a treatment of a pharmaceutical drug, a prescription for a surgery, or chemotherapy. These are going to be the three main options when you go to your regular Western medical doctor. And I'm very thankful for Western medical doctors because I wouldn't have my 4 children if I didn't have the doctors. In each time I did need a little bit of extra care with them. If you break your arm, you want to be able to go to the doctor and get that reset. But because of the limitations that doctors have and how they're trained, this can only take you so far in their care. And medications are actually used to just treat the symptoms. So say you have acid reflux, for example, your doctor is going to give you either a recommendation for an over-the-counter antacid or give you a prescription for an antacid. And this is just going to help to cool down that acid from coming up. Now, on the flip side, you could go to a naturopath doctor, and a naturopath doctor is going to take a more natural approach, but they're also going to be looking at just the symptoms and treating the symptoms. So the same thing, you go to the naturopath and you say, I have acid reflux, it just won't go away. And they're going to give you maybe a natural HCl or a natural enzyme that's going to help to control the release of that acid. But in regenerative health, for example, well, we're going to ask more questions. In fact, somebody that is dealing with constant acid reflux, that's actually a very high parasitic load in the body called H. pylori. So we look at, okay, what's the pancreas doing? Why isn't the pancreas secreting the proper amount of enzymes? What is the bacterial diversity happening in the gut? Is this person, eating their food properly? What's their diet like? So we're gonna take it many steps further. And why isn't the body actually producing the proper amount of acids to break down food? Why is it producing too much acid? And so we look at the particular tissue, glands, and organs. And so in regenerative health, again, we're not treating, but we're supporting the body. So some of the foundations in regenerative health is correcting the internal terrain of the body. And what I mean by that is the environment surrounding our cells. And so we've basically got two types of chemistry. We've got a base chemistry and we've got an acid chemistry, or alkaline versus acidic. And the acidic chemistry is going to break down and congest and cause heat, increase mucus in the body. And that's more of a hot, inflamed environment. And the alkaline side of chemistry is going to be cooling, very oxygenating, life giving, cause more free flow to happen around the cells. And when the cells are in a more alkaline, oxygenated environment, then they behave correctly. So we'll get more deeply into acid versus alkaline on another call, but that is one foundational aspect of regenerative health, is correcting the internal terrain. The other thing that most people have never even heard about in Western medicine, or naturopathic, or integrative medicine, is our lymphatic system. So this is a key component in regenerative health. So we are made up of between 35 and 70 trillion cells. Our body is 100% cells, and that's going to make up our tissue, glands, and organs. And we have two types of fluid in our body. We've got our blood and we've got our lymph. So our blood, I look at it as more of like the kitchen of the body. Whatever you eat goes into your blood, and that blood feeds the cells. And then we've got our lymphatic system. Our lymphatic system is what's called an interstitial tissue. It's actually like a slow moving river that collects cellular waste. So just like we eat and poop, our cells eat and poop. And the kitchen feeds the cells, the lymph cleans the cells. So I kind of look at the lymph as the trash can of the body. And it's very important that this lymphatic waste is being eliminated efficiently. Most people are not eliminating lymphatic waste effectively. Therefore, you start to have an overflow, or a flood happen in the body. So in regenerative health, we are also looking at the detox pathways, or the elimination pathways. So those four main pathways are our bowels. Our lymph will dump about 30% of lymphatic waste into the bowels. We also have the kidneys. The kidneys are direct faucet for the lymphatic system. And we should be seeing lymphatic waste come out in our urine. Most people, however, because of a standard American diet, weak adrenal glands, high stress lifestyles, poor food choices, extra burden, high protein diets, all have weaker kidneys. And so the kidneys are not always necessarily filtering out that lymphatic waste. So we've got our bowels, we've got our kidneys, and then we've got our lungs, and we've got our skin. So the lungs actually secrete about 70% of the body's toxins. If you're actively applying breath work and being intentional about releasing toxins, you can release so much through your breath. And then the fourth elimination pathway, which seems to be the easiest pathway for most people to eliminate waste, is the skin. And if you just think about it, we don't necessarily want our skin to be our main elimination pathway, because you start to see things like acne and eczema and psoriasis, dry skin, flaky skin. These kind of things are acids being pushed out through the skin. So the goal in regenerative health is to start to essentially turn off the faucet that's causing this waste being dumped constantly into the lymphatic system, and open up all the elimination pathways so the lymphatic waste can easily leave the body. So when we're doing this, we start to create an environment where there's more oxygen, where there's less heat, less inflammation, and we do this primarily by food. So in regenerative health, diet is a very large piece of the component. And when you're working with a regenerative health practitioner, you're going to be going into stages of gentle detoxification, because without detoxification, our body cannot clean itself effectively. So we, like I said, we have to turn off the faucet. So in detoxification, we're increasing fresh living foods from the earth, things like fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, fresh herbs. All of these things are going to help to increase the alkalinity in the body. The surrounding environment of the cells is going to begin to clean out. So we're working on changing the internal environment so the cells start to respond differently. And in regenerative detoxification, we're simultaneously supporting this said tissue, gland, or organ. Say you have liver weakness and maybe it's a diabetes diagnosis, let's say. So in type 2 diabetes, there's too much fat on the liver, and the pancreas isn't producing the right amount of enzymes and insulin to transport our glucose levels. And so we would be working on cleaning the liver, removing the fat deposits, detoxing the liver, removing the toxic waste. Our liver it filters so many different chemicals out of it, and when the liver is burdened, it doesn't operate effectively. So in the case of diabetes, we would want to actually be really focused on changing the diet. High protein, high meat diets actually cause more congestion and burden on the liver, because the liver has to do a lot to process and break down those excess proteins and fats. The liver is in charge of fat metabolism. It's in charge of cholesterol production. And it also has glucose receptors on, or insulin receptors on it. So when the liver is burdened by too much fat and too many toxins, when the pancreas releases insulin to transport glucose to the liver can't take on that glucose, and that's when you start to see blood spikes. And what happens in diabetes, for example, is the pancreas will start to essentially stop producing insulin because the liver isn't capable of taking it on. So in Western medicine, you're going to maybe get a statin or some kind of drug to eliminate the need for that insulin transport. And so you're basically shutting the system down. But in regenerative health, we're actually looking at why is the liver not responding to the insulin that's being put out, and why is the pancreas not producing the proper amount of insulin. So that's just a deeper example of why regenerative health is different. And so when we're cleaning the internal terrain of the body is actually heals as a unit. When you give the body the proper environment, it can take care of itself. So when we're taking folks through detoxification, we're simultaneously supporting the said tissue, gland, or organ. And this previous example, I talked about the liver. So in this, you would be using herbs, you would be using things like advanced zeolites that actually help to clean and capture toxins out of the blood, out of the fat, out of the lymphatic system. And so we're using these tools to do, a deep cleaning. And time again, when people find regenerative health, it's the last stop. They've tried everything, but they've never tried doing a guided, gentle detox that takes you through stages and phases of cleansing the body. So it's really quite simple. It does take grit and determination for somebody to go through this type of work. But what I found in my own journey is when I've increased my fresh fruit and my fresh vegetable intake, my body doesn't have to work as hard doesn't have to work so hard at digesting. Kind of interesting fun fact is when we're breaking down our foods, our digestive system is specifically designed to break down foods that are meant for our species type. And when I say that, it probably blows your mind a little bit because this is not information that is readily talked about. But if you think about it, our body is most like a primate. So our mouth has the same type of teeth as a primate. our digestive systems are most like a primate. Our digestive systems are between 30 and 40 feet long. We have a ptyalin in our saliva, which is an alkaline enzyme. Almost 100% of our digestive tract is alkaline. We do have more of an acidic environment in our stomach to break foods down. And then we do have some acidic areas within the colon to break down food further. But primarily, we are more of an alkaline species. We thrive on these foods that are easier to digest, that are most like a primate. Think about a primate eats a lot of fruit. They eat some seeds, they eat some nuts, they eat some insects, they eat some vegetables, but that's pretty much it. And if we were to look at, say, a carnivore has claws, they have teeth, they have a acidic saliva, they have an acidic digestive system to break down tissue and flesh, and they also have a digestive system that's about 4 feet long. So from the time that they're consuming their prey to the time that they're eliminating that, it's about 4 hours. And for us, if we were to consume, say, a steak, that's going to take our body it could take our body days to actually eliminate that, minimum 17 hours. And by design, we're not really meant to eat high levels of meat. And this is just the way our body is created. It's science, it's based on facts, it's based on our design. And so when we can start to consume foods that are easier to digest, our body is actually capable of resting. And when we rest, that is when our body heals. So that's what I have for you today. That's a lot of information. And I want to just continue this series to talk more about, diet and cellular health and different systems of the body. And so I just want to encourage you to tune in next week to hear a little bit more. And I'm really excited to just get this information out there because it's not complicated. It's quite simple. And you don't need a doctor to prescribe you a bunch of medication when your body is actually capable of healing itself. So thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to end the recording. And if anybody has any questions, I can take another minute. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. And now